Karen, it was helpful in Denver as we tried to figure out why would we ever do a building, to remember the story of how we ended up in this place. And for me, it goes back to Vancouver, finishing seminary, wanting to plant a church, thinking I had the gifts and the talents to do that. And Eugene, who knew the temperature in North America in the church and the temptations and the things that would tempt me to succeed or fail, saying, no, I think you need to go to Scotland or some old place to learn the old ways of being face to face with God, your neighbors, and yourself in Christ. That landed us on that adventure. I had no idea how much I needed a safe church and a healthy church to first be God's child and slowly learn how to be a pastor. Methlick was that for us. And I remember visiting different churches and interviewing, because they all needed pastors. And Methlick said, Matt, we don't need you to do something special. Just come grow with us. That was the organist who told me that, Blair. And I said, come grow with you? I would love to do that. So that was the invitation in that healthy place. Then one day, Jules and I woke up around age 40 and thought, are we going to stay here forever? Or can we imagine moving home? Because we missed home. We missed our roots. We missed the kind of church we grew up in. And so we prayed for a particular place in Washington State that would call us. And Trinity called us on the phone. And as I began to talk to them and learned that they were a church plant, which is what I wanted to do originally, that was now falling apart, I was like, oh no, that's a bad idea. Thankfully, Mark and Julia Barger and the DeVries flew out to come visit us, to not just interview us, but to interview the whole parish, to try to understand what's going on here. They learned that Methlick Church was planted in the year 410, the same year Rome fell, more or less. And that a church for 1,600 years could find ways to be in Christ, together through Viking attacks, reformations, world wars, but faithful together in Christ, was astounding to them. They also hired me because I happen to know a little bit about that. But the project was to always try and translate what's happening in healthy places around the world into some of the unhealth of what's happening in the North American church. So we signed up for the adventure of coming to Trinity and seeing if we could live out here what we had begun to learn over there. Not that we had it figured out, not that we had arrived, but we knew what we were beginning to confess. So the story picks up with what I thought was going to be the beginning of growth in Trinity Church. No, we had not yet fully died. And there was a lot of suffering and death still to go, owning our story, owning our own things, before we could practice resurrection. But a few people did just that, stuck around, learned what it meant to be God's child, learned what it meant to mature in Christ. And that gathering of brothers and sisters, I wouldn't say kept this church alive. They learned to practice resurrection. There's a lot more to that story. But I got to join in that process. And lately, there's more people coming, seeking their own healing, trying to understand, what are we doing on the corner of Peachy and Okanagan? Why are you still in this one place? The Wenatchee Brethren Baptist gifted us this building a couple years ago. And we've been wondering ever since, How do we steward this gift well? Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants to just keep it as it is. Part of me wants to do something that lets the building match the story of what's been happening in our church, of being healed, of going face to face with God, our neighbors, and ourselves, of learning what it is to be God's kids and to mature in Christ. And right now the building works against that in several ways. A, you don't know where we are. B, once you get inside, if you make it inside, you're not sure where to go. C, once you're there, it's like a maze that's easy to get lost in. But we love God's first question, where are you? And we're trying to learn to say, here we are, in this place, on pilgrimage, in Christ, growing in Him, growing in each other. And if our building can somehow match that movement God's always been trying to do, that would be a great gift, not just to ourselves, not just to the parish, but I pray other churches that have known this story of being planted, falling apart, but being born again in ways none of us could have imagined, in ways that I would have made the same mistakes way back at seminary, thinking I had the gifts and the skills or the something to do things differently. No, I'd have made the same mistakes. Now I'm a part of God's redeeming mistakes all of us have made in a place that's setting us free. I'm so glad Eugene kept me from doing what I thought I was supposed to do for God's will, which was covering a host of things I did not yet know about myself. First at Methodic, and now at Trinity, God is slowly teaching me about who God is and who I am. And others are discovering the same. That's why we might do something with the building. If the congregation discerns the timing is right, and this fits the mission of being reparented by the Trinity, being brothers and sisters in Christ, and not just preaching about that, but being these people in Wenatchee. That's our prayer. And I'm enjoying watching it slowly, but faithfully being answered.